Shalom, I'm Tony Robinson of Restoration of Torah Ministries, and I want to welcome you to the Haftarah Connections Lectures. And this week we're dealing with Parashat Va'eira, Torah portion Va'eira, which extends from Exodus chapter 6 verse 2 to Exodus chapter 9 verse 35. And the Haftarah reading is from Ezekiel chapter 28 verse 25 to Ezekiel 29 verse 21. And again, as we start every Haftarah Connections lesson with this question, why was Ezekiel 28:25 through 29:21 chosen as the Haftarah for the Torah portion Va'eira? So let's go ahead and get started with that. And again, as we have said before, the Haftarah readings were chosen because there are thematic connections between the Haftarah reading and the Torah portion. In other words, there are similar words, phrases, and themes. And so what we'll do is we'll go through the Torah portion and the Haftarah, and we will compare those two and try to see those similar themes. So the first verse that we want to look at is Ezekiel chapter 29 verse 2, where it says, "Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt." That is thematically connected to Exodus chapter 6 verse 29, where it says that the Lord spoke to Moses saying, "I am Adonai, speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I say to you." And the common connection there, there's two connections. Number one, it says, speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Okay, both passages mention Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And then the other thing is the fact that Adonai says, "I want you to speak to him everything that I say to you." Okay, so that is a common thematic connection. Let's look at another one. How about Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 25a, where it says, "When I have gathered the house of Israel from the peoples among whom they are scattered." Okay, that is thematically connected to Exodus chapter 6 verse 8 and chapter 7 verse 5. And I'll read that. It says, "And I will bring you into the land, from Egypt, which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them." Okay, so now what's happening here is in Ezekiel, he's talking about gathering the house of Israel from the nations, okay? Because Ezekiel 28 is talking about events that are going to happen towards the end in the last of days, where Israel will be exiled among the nations. The connection to the Torah portion is that in the Torah portion, Israel was exiled, if you will, in the land of Egypt. And so again, this is another one of these powerful Torah portion Haftarah combinations that teaches us that the Egyptian exile is a picture or a paradigm, or is a prophetic picture of the exile of Israel among the nations. And so Ezekiel is picking up on this, and he's saying that basically he's saying, look, just as Israel was exiled in Egypt, so likewise will they be exiled among the nations. And just as I gathered Israel from Egypt, so likewise shall I gather them from the nations. Okay, so this is a very good connection showing that. How about another one? How about Ezekiel 29 verse 13, where it says, "At the end of 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the peoples among whom they were scattered." And again, that's thematically connected to the previous verse that we were looking at, Exodus 6, 8, and 7, 5. And again, now this time, what happened in the Haftarah reading is Adonai said, "Hey, I'm going to destroy Egypt, and I'm going to exile the Egyptians for 40 years. Okay, you remember in the Torah portion, Israel, after they left Egypt, they wandered for 40 years in the desert. Well, Adonai says that I'm going to actually exile the Egyptians for 40 years, and after that I'm going to gather them from their exile and bring them back to Egypt. Well, even though Egypt is not a picture of Israel, we still see the common theme of gathering a nation gathering one nation from the other nations to where they had been exiled. Okay, so this is a predominant theme in this particular Torah portion Haftarah combination. The idea of Adonai taking a nation that has been scattered among the nations and then bringing them back into their own land. So that's the common connection there. How about Ezekiel 25, Ezekiel 28, 25b, where it says, I am hallowed in them in the sight of the Gentiles. In other words, his name is going to be set apart. The Gentiles will recognize him for being who he is, the one and only true God. So his name will be hallowed or sanctified. That's thematically connected to Exodus 7:5 and Exodus 9:5. It says, and the Egyptians shall know that I am Adonai, when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them, that you may know that there is none like me on the earth. And see, that's, if you go back to Exodus, that was one of the main reasons why Adonai delivered Israel from Egypt the way he did, the way he implemented systematic plagues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10, and each time kind of upping the ante, and the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. You see, Adonai could have just pulled the children of Israel out of Egypt. I mean, he could have just destroyed them in the blink of an eye, and then Israel could have came out. But he had a purpose. He had a plan in why and how he took the children of Israel out of Egypt. And the purpose that he had was so that Egypt and the rest of the world would know that he is the Lord, that they would know that he is the one and only true God. And so in the Haftarah reading, we also see the same thing. We see that he wants the nations to hallow his name and to know that he is the one and only true God. Okay? How about Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 25c? Okay, Ezekiel 28, 25c. It says, and they will dwell in their own land, which I gave to my servant Jacob. That is thematically connected to Exodus chapter 6, verse 8, where it says, I will bring you into the land which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you as a heritage. And again, the common connection here between the Torah portion and the Haftarah is the idea that Adonai is going to bring the children of Israel back to their ancestral plot of land. And so that's the common theme before them. And so again, as I said, you can see that a predominant theme here is this whole idea of return from exile to the ancestral plot of land. And if you think about it, you think about Adam and Eve, this was their punishment. Adam and Eve, that was their punishment, that they were exiled or banished from the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was their ancestral plot of land. And because of their disobedience, they were exiled from the garden, and they were exiled from the tree of life, so that they could not eat from the tree of life and live forever. And so the whole question is, how does man who has been banished from exile, has been exiled from the garden, how is he able to return so that he can get eternal life? By partaking of the tree of life. And so what we see is that Adam and Eve also become a paradigm for the children of Israel, because the children of Israel, they were given a special land also, and because of their disobedience, they were exiled from their plot of land, which is called Israel. Okay, and so we see a lot of parallels, and see really Adam and Eve are actually a prophetic picture of the nation of Israel. Being through disobedience, being scattered or exiled, and then the rest of the story is how Adonai will regather his people from exile. Okay, how about another connection? How about Ezekiel 28, verse 26, which says, when I execute judgments on all those around them who despise them. That is thematically connected to Exodus 6:6 and 7:4, where it says, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments, but Pharaoh will not heed you, so that I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. So in other words, the judgments against Egypt in the deliverance of the children of Israel from the Egyptian exile, it serves as a prophecy of what will happen in the last days when Adonai executes judgments on all the nations around them. Now, I believe that that's going to obviously be all of the Muslim nations that surround Israel, as well as many other nations in the world that will come against Israel in the last days. But the whole idea is that just as Adonai, he executed judgments upon Egypt. He executed judgments upon Egypt because he wanted them to acknowledge that he was Adonai, that he was the creator, and they would not do that. Okay, and so he had to systematically up the ante. And the same thing is going to happen in the last days. And you can read about that even in the book of Revelation, where it says that even though Adonai increases the judgments against the earth, that men still will not repent, and they still blaspheme his name. Okay? All right, how about Ezekiel? In Ezekiel 28, verse 26, it says that they may know that I am the Lord their God. Okay. As a matter of fact, it says it about 5 times in the Haftarah that Adonai says he's going to do the things that he can do so that they, meaning Israel, shall know that I am the Lord their God. Well, in Exodus chapter 7, verse 17, it says, "Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord," or I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I typically would just say I am Adonai. And that's stated 7 times in the Torah portion reading. So this obviously is a predominant theme that the children of, not only that the Egyptians would know that he is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, but also that the children of Israel would know that he is their God, that they would know that he is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, which is his redemptive name. It is the name that he uses when he comes to bring redemption and deliverance and salvation. Okay? All right, so another predominant theme. And so in that case, what we were doing is we were looking at the number of times that something is mentioned. So whenever you see in a short period of time something that's repeated very often, that's Adonai's way of getting your attention. That's something very important that he wants us to look at and concentrate on and gain understanding from. In Ezekiel 29, 1 through 10, the Nile River is mentioned 9 times, okay? And in Exodus 7, 15 through 8, 11, the Nile River is mentioned 18 times, okay? So again, we're keying off of this idea of a repetition. So one of the verses I want to read to you from Ezekiel is Ezekiel 29, verse 3. It says, "Behold, I am against you, O Pharaoh, king of Egypt, O great monster, who lies in the midst of the rivers, who has said, my river is my own, I made it myself." Okay? And so we want to know what the connection there is. Now think about this. Ezekiel is prophesying against the king of Egypt, and he's saying, he calls him a great monster. He says, "Oh great monster who lies in the midst of the rivers." And notice what Pharaoh is saying. Pharaoh is saying, my river is my own, and I've made it for myself. So apparently Pharaoh is a little confused about who created the Nile River. Okay, and that obviously that was an Egyptian myth that Pharaoh was a god and that he had created the river. So let's look at this word great monster. The Hebrew is Hatanin Hagadol, great monster. Hatanin, that's the monster. Hagadol is great. And so Latanin is variously translated as dragon, serpent, sea monster, crocodile, or whale. Okay? And so what we want to do is we want to compare that to Exodus chapter 7, verses 9 through 12. Exodus chapter 7, verses 9 through 12, when, let's see what it says there. It says, "When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves, then you shall say to Aaron, take up your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent," is what most translations say. So Moses and Aaron, they did so. They cast down their rod, and it became a serpent. But what I want to show you is that a lot of times you can miss things in the Hebrew, because sometimes the English translations do not translate the Hebrew words to their fullest meaning. And so, for instance, in Exodus 7, 9 through 12, the word in the Hebrew there is tanin, latanin. Okay, and so remember in Ezekiel 29, 3, latanin was translated monster. You know, it was translated monster, or it could be like crocodile or whale. Okay, whereas the very same word latanin in Exodus 7, 9 through 12 is translated serpent. Okay. Now the usual word that's used for serpent is nachash. Nachash. And that's not what's used in Exodus 7, 9 through 12. Okay, so we want to look at this and we want to see why this is so. If you go back to Exodus 4, verses 2 through 4 and 30 through 31, you will find out that the original miracle involving the changing of the staff into a snake, or Nachash, was a miracle for Israel, you see. In other words, when Adonai, when he first sent Moses to the children of Israel, remember he gave Moses 3 signs. He said, I'm going to give you these 3 signs so that when you go to them, they'll believe you. And one of them was that Aaron would throw down the rod and it would become a snake, a Nachash. And so that's what happened with the children of Israel. He threw it down and it became a Nachash, la Nachash. But in Exodus chapter 7, when he goes before Pharaoh and throws it down, it doesn't become la Nachash. It becomes latanin. Okay? It becomes latanin, even though it's translated serpent. So the question is, why did it appear as a snake to Israel, but a crocodile or this big monster to the Egyptians when he threw it down before them? So let's read Ezekiel 29:3 again. He says, I'm against you, O king of Pharaoh, O great monster who lies in the midst of the rivers, who has said, the river is my own, I made it for myself. Okay? Again, as I said, Pharaoh's confused on who made the river. So what I want to suggest to you is that Ezekiel 29:3 is a direct attack upon Pharaoh's king-god myth. Okay? It is a direct attack on his god-king myth. In other words, he's referred to as the monster Latanin for a reason, and here's the reason. If you go back to Parashat Bereshit, when Adonai created the heavens and the earth, it says that he created the heavens and the earth, and that word is bara. Okay, he created. Bereshit bara. In the beginning, he created. But that word bara that word created is used again in the creation account, and it has to do with the creation of the great sea monsters. Okay, so ha-taninim ha-gadol. Okay, so if you look in Bereshit, when he creates all of the animals of the sea, and it talks about the great sea creatures, that is the Tananim again, or the Tanim. And again, that besides man, okay, besides, the earth and man, the only creatures stated to be created using the word bara were the great sea creatures, okay? And so that's why the connection to Ezekiel 29:3 is clear. Because Pharaoh is called the great monster, or the Hatanin Hagadol, and he is confused as to who created the river and the great sea monsters. And so Adonai, he is using this word latanin to make us go back to Bereshit, where the tanin were first mentioned, and clearly there it was Adonai who created. He is the one who barad the tanin, if you will. And so he's just trying to straighten out Pharaoh's understanding that indeed is Adonai who created everything and not him. Okay, so let's look at Ezekiel 29 verse 4. It says, but I will put hooks in your jaws, and compare that to Exodus 7:3, where it says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in Egypt. Okay, the connection there is when Adonai tells Pharaoh in Ezekiel, I'm going to put hooks in your jaws. Basically what he's telling him is, look, I'm going to have you do what I want you to do. Okay? You're not going to be able to resist me. I'm going to put a big hook in your jaw, and I'm going to pull you, and I'm going to have you do what I want you to do. Okay? And so in Exodus 7 verse 3, the obvious connection there is when Adonai says, look, I'm going to harden his heart. Because remember, the Exodus was orchestrated the way it was for a purpose, and it was to get glory for Adonai, so that Egypt and all the other nations would know that he is the one and only, and so that the children of Israel would know that he is the one and only. And so Adonai was exercising his sovereignty by saying, I'm going to harden your heart so that you won't let them go, so that I can continue to pour out my judgments upon you. How about Ezekiel 29:8? It says, surely I will bring a sword upon you and cut you off and cut off from you man and beast. Well, that's thematically connected to Exodus 9:25, where it says that the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt that was in the field, and both man and beast. So you see that same phrase, both man and beast. So we're just seeing a lot of thematic connections. This is one of those good Torah portions where you see lots of similar words, phrases, and ideas. How about Ezekiel 29:10? It says, "Indeed, therefore, I am against you and against the rivers, and I will make the land of Egypt utterly waste and desolate." And of course, that's exactly what happened in Exodus chapter, in the whole Torah portion. You know, Adonai basically laid waste the land of Egypt. Okay, so what do we see here? What are some of the major themes that we see here as we kind of look back on everything? We see the major theme of redemption and exile. Many of the first connections that I showed you, they were about gathering the nation of Israel from the nations, as far as Ezekiel was concerned, but gathering them from Egypt, as far as the Torah portion was concerned. They were about bringing Israel from the nations to their land, as far as Ezekiel and as far as the Torah portion was concerned. So that was a major theme of redemption and exile. And again, as I said, it forms the very basis for what's going to happen in the end days, so in the time. So everything in the Torah portion is relevant for this day that we live in. Another major thing was that mankind would know that who Adonai is and give him glory, that his name would be hallowed, that his name would be sanctified among the nations as well as among his people himself. He says, so that they shall know me. And we saw that in Ezekiel 29:3 that Adonai specifically took issue with Pharaoh over the God-King myth. And Adonai used that word letanim to take us back to Genesis, where it is clear that Adonai barad, or created the tanim, not Pharaoh himself. Okay, so Adonai, he is the God of creation. Another major thing that we see is that he does what he wants to do. Okay, he is sovereign. He is sovereign. Okay, he does what he wants to do. But unfortunately, it is only through the devastating judgments that man will listen. And you think about it. Think about the plague of darkness. This is something that amazes me. The plague of darkness. Can you think of 3 days, 72 solid hours of pitch blackness, where it says it was so thick you can cut it? I mean, those people had to have been psychologically terrorized. I mean, I just couldn't imagine. And think of all the little children that had to have been crying and just weeping and clutching to their parents throughout those 72 hours. I mean, it is crazy. And yet, the Egyptians continued to not let the children of Israel go. I mean, this is amazing. You know, people say today, well, you know, if Adonai did great miracles today, that people would believe. No, they wouldn't. The example of Egypt is a great example. All the miracles that he did, where he separated the judgments from his people and their people, they could see that. They could see that. They saw that none of the animals of the Israelites were killed, and yet they persisted in their sin. And so, unfortunately, it's through devastating judgment. And the same thing is going to happen over in the Middle East. Okay, because the Muslims, you know, they continue to badger and to attack Israel, and the same thing is going to happen one day. And so the other thing that we learned is that the Egyptian exile is a prophetic pattern for Israel's return at the end of the age. Okay, at the end of the age. And so what we learn is that Israel will be among the nations in the last days, and therefore the Egyptian bondage and delivery is a story of redemption in the last days. It's a story of redemption. And so again, you know, we see the importance of the Torah as a prophetic document, and hopefully these connections have shown you again how important it is to make thematic connections, similar words, phrases, themes, situations, circumstances, etc. So, in the name of Yeshua, may Adonai bless you as you study his word. In Yeshua's name, amen.